Frankly speaking, Henry was my only real friend. We weren't just roommates who rented an apartment together. He helped me out several times, even with the rent, when I was short on money. He used to sit in the kitchen, drunk, and talk nonsense. His mouth wouldn't shut, annoying me with the chatter. Nevertheless, he was a kind guy. Never once did I hear him say anything bad about anybody. Did he ever do anything terrible to me? No. Actually, I didn't deserve his friendship. It was all my fault. Maybe I could help, or at least not hurt him. I don't know. Now it's too late to figure it out. But I keep digging inside myself, picking at old wounds. We were studying at the same university and renting separate rooms in an apartment since freshman year. We lived like that for 4 years until recently. It happened about 2 months ago. I came home in the evening and heard Henry coughing in his room, choking. I asked him from the doorstep, "Are you all right?"
"My throat hurts,"
the neighbor answered hoarsely from his room. "You said that only teetotalers get sick," I replied sarcastically. Henry often chirped that any virus is harmless to him because his body is soaked with alcohol, so he had been drinking the night before, and now he was sick. I am a squeamish person with a weak immune system, so I decided to stay away from my neighbor's room and try not to cross paths with him in the kitchen. I didn't want to catch a disease and get complications later on. Furthermore, I even started wearing a mask at home. That night, I didn't sleep well. The neighbor next door was wheezing and coughing. "Oh, I'm sick of it. Go to the hospital or call a doctor," I yelled at him as I got ready for class in the morning. "I don't need that," Henry sobbed from his room. "You'll get problems at university without a medical certificate," I continued moralizing. My roommate seemed terribly irresponsible, and I wondered how he hadn't dropped out of university before the 4th year. It was only in the evening that I came back, having my personal concerns on my mind. I didn't even remember about Henry. I was sitting in my room, doing some work as I had to earn my rent. Then, all of a sudden, I heard my friend wheezing behind the wall again, as if he was suffocating. I shouted at him, "Are you curing or just waiting for it to disappear on its own?"
"I'm fine,"
the neighbor said with difficulty.
"It's just a sore throat."
"Have you been to the doctor?" I asked. He didn't answer. It made me irritated. I am doing my best here, studying, working, running around like a hamster in a wheel. And Henry doesn't care. He got drunk and couldn't earn his share of the rent, so his relatives will send him the money. These thoughts made me feel bad. Some people in this world try their best and still have a hard life, while others drink carelessly and don't care about anything. The neighbor was wheezing all night long. It wasn't even the noise itself that bothered me, but the fact that there was some kind of virus in the apartment, and I could get sick too. I took my temperature, drank tea from only 1 cup, and washed my hands every now and then it happened. The next night, when I came back from my studies, I smelled an awful, unpleasant odor in my apartment. "Man, have you got someone dead in there?" I shouted. My neighbor was silent. "Hello?" I called again. "Henry?" Silence. And then it finally dawned on me that I was being a jerk. My neighbor is there with a sore throat, and I shudder past his room, afraid of getting infected. At least I could have called an ambulance. Besides, I haven't seen him in 2 days. I took my shoes off, went to his door, and said, "Henry, are you okay in there? Shall I buy you some medicine?" I opened the door and saw my neighbor hanging in a noose with an overturned chair under his feet, screaming at the top of my lungs. I ran out of there. My hands were shaking. I was looking at my phone for a long time, unable to remember what I should do, where to call, who to call for help. Then I realized that I had to call 911. All I could do was shout into the phone, "My neighbor committed suicide. He hanged himself." The operator must have worked with such calls for a while and put me through to the local medical unit. The ambulance dispatcher asked me how long ago it had happened. I didn't know that. They asked me to check if my neighbor was alive or not. It was hard for me to bring myself to go into his room again, so I just told them to hurry up and do it themselves. My voice was trembling. My whole body was shaking. I had never seen such a nightmare in my life. That blue face, those rolled up eyes. Once you see it, you never forget it. I just saw a dead man in a noose, and now I don't know how to live with it. And that smell. Where did that smell come from? I was sitting on the floor against the wall in the hallway. I don't know how long it took before the ambulance and the police arrived. Probably 20 minutes. When they took the body out of the apartment in a bag, the police came after me. They asked where I had slept for the past 3 days. I said I'd been home in my room, and they questioned me about how it was that all that time I hadn't noticed that my roommate had committed suicide. Well, he just did it today, didn't he? I said.
Obviously,
said the investigator unkindly.
Did you see him? He was in the rope for the 3rd day. Didn't you even go in and check on your roommate?
He was... I wanted to tell him that Henry had been talking to me, coughing and complaining about his sore throat. Now I was realizing it. The neighbor had been dead for more than 2 days. His appearance and smell confirmed it. But why had I heard his voice then? I didn't want to discuss this with the police, knowing that they wouldn't believe me. I lied that Henry didn't like it when someone disturbed him. Besides, I came back only in the evening and went straight to bed. How could I know what was going on in the neighbor's room? They left me alone around 10 p.m. I was left by myself in the apartment. Right then, I had already decided that I was going to move out. I didn't want to stay in that apartment even for a single night. It reeked horribly of a dead body. In no time, I found a cheap motel and drove there. It was impossible to stop wondering why I was hearing the voice of a dead man. Was it hallucination? Had I gone insane? Could it be a coincidence with a sore throat? Was it possible that the night it happened, I had heard him wheezing through his sleep? Maybe my subconscious brain was guessing that this could have happened and was trying to give me a clue. I didn't believe in ghosts, so I tried to explain everything rationally. It was my luck to find another apartment in one night. It was a shabby studio apartment for a lot of money, but I was happy to move out and forget about what had happened. The very next day, I was already packing. I shouldn't have taken too long to move, and all my belongings fit into a few bags. I was already standing at the open door, about to say goodbye to this place forever. A cab was waiting for me downstairs, and then I heard wheezing and coughing behind me. Very quiet, but I heard it, and goosebumps ran down my back. "Henry, why did you do that?" I asked it in a whisper.
You know the reason,
responded a hoarse voice from Harry's room. It was him. It was my dead neighbor. I threw the bags over the threshold and ran out of there. I locked the apartment and ran down the stairs. The key was left in the mailbox. I left the house, never to return. A few days passed. I felt lousy. It was hard for me to recover from what had happened. The image of my neighbor hanging in a noose was still stuck in my mind. I remembered that I had been living in an apartment with a dead body for almost 3 days and hadn't bothered to check on him. I wondered, could I have helped him? Could I have prevented a tragedy from happening? What was the reason? Had I really hurt him that much? I wasn't the only one gnawing at myself. I was also blamed by others. People who knew we were living together kept asking me why I didn't know anything, and they also asked why I lied about Harry being sick when they had wondered where he had gone. What was I supposed to say? That I had been talking to my dead neighbor through the wall for 2 days? Even good acquaintances seemed to leave me. I called Mary. This is my close friend. I even thought she had a romantic interest in me. She was the only person I was ready to share with that I had heard Henry's voice. The truth was that I just wanted support, but she treated me rather critically. "Why don't you come to the funeral?" Mary asked. "Were you there?" I was surprised. "Of course, we knew each other," she answered. "I thought you would come too, but you weren't there." "Mary, I couldn't come. It was hard for me. I made excuses. Let's meet again, shall we? We can even have a little wine or something.
Sorry, Tony. I'm not in the right mood right now. On the contrary, I want to sit alone in silence all the time. I'm thinking about Henry. I feel sorry for him. It was a mistake.
As you say. I cut her off and hung up. I had enough sorrow of my own. No problem. I will do it alone, I thought to myself. There was a store on the first floor of my new abode where I bought myself some whiskey. Sitting in the kitchen, I knocked over one shot and then another. It didn't make me feel any better, but at least I relaxed a little. I thought it wasn't so bad to live alone. No one would leave a frying pan on the stove. No one would occupy the bathroom and toilet for a long time. Everything is at my disposal now. Then I had a few more drinks. My nerves calmed down. My eyes got foggy, and suddenly I heard a low wheezing sound from the room. It sounded like a cough, as if someone was suffocating. I instantly sobered up, went into the room, turned on the light, but there was nothing special. I returned to the kitchen and resolutely poured the bottle into the sink. Screw it all. I washed my face with cold water and went to bed without turning out the lights. I wanted to put the incident out of my mind, but from then on, I never felt safe in the apartment again. All the time I went into the room with caution, peeking over the threshold, as if I were afraid to see something in the empty room. To see a hangman in a noose? I thought about consulting a psychologist. There had to be someone to share what was inside of my head. I was no longer coping with my thoughts and anxieties. On top of that, I was having trouble sleeping. One night, I dozed off and heard someone wheezing in my ear. It made me wake up abruptly, shaking my whole body. The room was dark and quiet. My heart was racing. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or if the noise was real. Life began to seem dull. The only thing I dreamed about was to invite someone home, just sit and chat, maybe watch a movie. But night after night, I passed alone. I didn't notice how I began to complain to Mary that she didn't pay attention to me, that she distanced herself from me. At first, she referred to her busyness, but when I became too intrusive, she told me directly that she didn't owe me anything. The girl reminded me that we didn't really have anything, so there was nothing to expect from her. Moreover, Mary mentioned Harry. Why? He died a long time ago. He doesn't care. After that hard conversation, I wanted to go to a bar, get drunk with someone, and have a heart-to-heart talk. No one had time for that. Everyone was busy. Everyone had things to do. Harry would never refuse. He was always happy to have a drink. Whatever. I went to the store for a bottle, got a good snack, turned on some stupid comedy, and pretended to be having fun. I felt his presence when I drank another shot. The laptop screen flickered, and the room was dusky. I sat on the couch, crunching my chips loudly, so I couldn't hear the wheezing from the darkness, keeping on drinking. I had completely stopped perceiving what was happening in the movie. I looked at the screen with unfocused eyes, saw only blurred spots of color, but a black silhouette hanging from the ceiling became more and more clear. "What do you want from me?" I asked without turning my head. "Why do you come here? Leave me alone." I hoped that the dead man didn't answer me, but out of the darkness came a hoarse voice.
"You want me to stay here, don't you?"
No, I answered, trembling with fear. Go away. Why do I need you?"
"Well, I have always played the part of the one who is worse for you,"
the dead man said quietly and squeezed.
"You looked at me and admired yourself. You thought Henry is an alcoholic and a loser. You look good against my background. You work, you study well, the girls like you."
The thoughts of others don't matter. I took a sip from the bottle. It was strange to talk to a dead man.
"That's true. Thoughts weren't enough for you."
Harry wheezed.
"You had to prove to me what a jerk I was and how good you were."
No, dude, you've got it all wrong. I began to justify myself when I realized what he was getting at.
I liked Mary back in my freshman year. I chased her, tried to woo her.
Said my former roommate.
But then I realized that she didn't like me, so I gave up. Why bother a girl when she obviously doesn't want to try to get closer? I decided to let her date someone she liked.
The dark silhouette dangled in the noose, and I sipped from the bottle. So what? Was it forbidden for me to approach her? I said, trying not to weak myself.
No, I told you. Let everyone decide for himself whom to be with,
answered Henry.
But you didn't like Mary at all. You saw how she smiled at you and decided to take advantage of it. You know about my feelings and decided to prove to both of us, but you pretended that everything was happening on its own, and you didn't do it on purpose.
I didn't argue. He was right. I decided to hit on Mary because Henry liked her. I wanted to show off.
I don't blame you, Tony. I was in a very bad mood at the time,
continued the hanged man.
I felt like a jerk myself. My head was so full of bad thoughts, and all of a sudden you came home with Mary. You convinced her to come after all. You were sitting there, talking. She was laughing so hard at your every joke, and I was alone in my room drinking a bottle. I felt bad, as usual, and I knew you were putting on this concert just for me, but I couldn't take it anymore. So I did what I did.
Am I the only one who drove you to it? I wanted to take another sip, but the bottle was already empty. Mary's good and I'm bad? She also dumped you.
Don't you remember?
My ex-friend wheezed.
She told you that night. Why don't we invite Henry to sit with us? What did you tell her? He's interested in alcohol. That's what you told her. And, you know, Mary still cries every night.
Forgive me,
I pleaded.
Forgive me. She left afterward anyway. We had nothing.
I tearfully turned toward the dark figure, and there was no one. The hanged man had melted away like smoke. It turned out I was the only one sitting in the empty room. There was one more attempt to get back to a normal life. I thought that if I ended my loneliness, things would get better. I downloaded a dating app, put up better photos, and got serious about the search. It turned out to be a success. I came across one really cute girl. For her sake, I cleaned up, shaved, cut my hair, and pressed my shirt. The first date went well. I even thought I was in love. On the second date, I invited her home. My apartment wasn't very nice, but she didn't mind. The girl brought a bottle of wine, but I refused to drink, so I offered her juice and promised to surprise her with dinner. She said that men had never cooked for her before. I left her in the room and went to finish the noodles and cream sauce and shrimp. It was the first time I'd ever cooked something like this with a recipe from the internet. Within 2 minutes, my new lady came running into the kitchen. Her face was frightened. What happened? I asked.
Someone was wheezing in there,
she squealed. Where? I wondered.
In the room. Someone was wheezing so badly, as if he was being strangled.
The girl almost cried. That might be the neighbors, I muttered.
No, there were horrible wheezing sounds right next to me,
swore my friend.
Do you know how scared I was? Do you have ghosts here?
I convinced her that the house had old pipes that could make all sorts of noises. She didn't seem to believe me. The whole evening, she sat like on pins and needles, smiling nervously, and left as soon as we ate. We never saw each other again. Until that day, I had been sure that it was my imagination making me feel guilty, but it turned out to be real. Henry will follow me forever now. How many weeks in a row have I come home with a bottle of spirits? I don't remember. I don't even have money for decent alcohol anymore, so I take some cheap stuff. Things aren't going well at work, and I'm having problems with my studies. Mary started worrying about me. She says I look poorly. She tries to call me sometimes, but I don't answer the phone. Yeah, screw her. I go back to my empty apartment, turn on my laptop, and drink. Harry is hanging in a noose next to me in my room. I always see him now, and I don't mind anymore. He just hangs there, swaying. My dead neighbor doesn't talk to me, doesn't even wheeze or cough. I got used to it a long time ago. Sometimes I try to talk to him myself, since I have no other interlocutors. Soon I will be asked for money for the rent, but I have nothing to pay. I don't know what to do. All kinds of bad thoughts creep into my head.